my boys are old enough now. We've had those conversations of what happened. I want them to know, like, it's okay. You're gonna screw up, right?
Yeah.
Just don't do the same things I did. Be better.
Sometimes life's biggest lessons are learned through life's biggest mistakes. That's Andrew Fischer on this week's episode of the Jaded Mechanic Podcast Part 2, picking up right where we left off of Jeff and Andrew's conversation last week. Part 2 starts right now.
Yeah. And that's, it sucks because I keep saying there's always lessons. We take lessons from everybody,
Yes.
right? But sometimes it's like when the neighbor's screwing up, we don't take that as the lesson. We don't even pay any attention.
Nope.
But when it's happening right in our own closed circle, my dad made some failures as a husband and a father that like were really tough to stomach, and it taught me. And I used to say, "Oh no, I'm never gonna be like him." I was so much like him. It wasn't even funny.
Ain't that funny?
Yeah, it is, right? The apple and the tree. Now, it was through understanding his background that helped me understand why he probably was the way he was. And then it shows me, before I go to the same places, understand where it's coming from, what's driving me to do it. And then that is the lesson. The lesson isn't, I used to think the lesson is just watch what that person does and don't do it. That's not the lesson. The lesson to understand is what's making that person do that. Okay. When you see that happening to you, pull back or go forward or make a lateral move, do something, reach out to somebody. Because that's all it takes, and you're going to screw up. We all are. We are going to make mistakes. It is part of growth. It is part of life. There's only ever been one perfect man, and you know what they did to him.
Absolutely.
So, I wear my shit like a badge. It doesn't define me, but it's certainly, it's right on the tip of my brain all the time where I failed. And I think you have to do that. There's a way you can do it without punishing yourself, but I think it's the most truth when you bring it to yourself is you then put that truth on others. And
Absolutely.
it's without getting deep, like it's just, but that's the lesson there.
Well,
that is the lesson,
It's there's a Montgomery Gentry song, Tattoos and Scars, and I wear my tattoos and my scars the same way. I'll show them to you, right? And if you want to have a conversation, I'm always up for it. If you feel like you just need somebody to talk to, I tell everybody, like, hey man, if you're having a bad day, like shit's getting you down, call me, because I'd rather you call me at 2 a.m. Let's have a conversation than never getting that phone call again. So yeah, it's just growth, right? And it's sad that it takes us so long. I mean, I'm pushing 40. I'm going to be 39 this coming January, and it took me almost 40 years to realize this. I wish these were the things we learned early. Obviously, the growth is the fun part, right? But it's the stuff, I probably wouldn't have job jumped as much. I would have done things a lot different. I'm gonna be honest. I would have gotten to training a lot sooner, like trying to be a presenter, instructor, whatever you want to call it. Just to try to help people, pay it forward sooner. And just sad that it took so long to get there.
So after the teaching gig, or the high school teaching gig, what was the next step for Andrew?
So the next step, there was a gentleman here in our area that owns a highly successful, high volume repair shop. And I always admired Jeff. I admired his two sons that are running it today. They're third generation.
Nice.
Jeff was at every training event, every CTI class given in the area. He was awesome, very intelligent. And I don't want to go too far down his story, but him and I were going through very similar things at the same time, so we talked a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff found out what happened to me at the school, and I had a text message, and he's like, "Hey, if you need somewhere to land, man, I got a spot for you." So Jeff and his two sons, Jake and Jeremy, took me in with open arms. I became a drivability tech. I was just doing diagnostic work, and that helped get me through. I mean, I'll give them a little shout out here. The readers really stepped up and became family to me when I needed it the most. They were very accommodating in what I wanted to do. Like they knew I wanted to instruct. They seen the itch. They were great with me when the opportunity to go to work for Sherwood down south came available. And they reached back out when they knew I had to come back home.
Right.
So I ended up with them. I actually just recently left them again, for no other reason. Like sometimes seasons change, right? And they're growing. They're going in a direction that for me and my health, I'm having a little bit of health issues, and um, I knew I had to slow down. I wanted to focus on training. Another gentleman that I admire, hey man, I can make this work if you want to come here and do things with us while you're teaching. So it's again, I've been blessed, man. I've been God's taking care of me. My friends have taken care of me. People have taken care of me. So
Yeah.
if I can pay that forward in any way, shape, or form, I do. So
I think that's what happens when we put good things out there. And I
yeah,
mean, even like, how you think, like we look back sometimes and we're like, I wasn't doing anything good out there for
no,
anyone, and I shouldn't be. But sometimes it's just the little things, the wanting to put the want means that you still reciprocate, you still get it back, um to touch on Sherwood,
yeah.
what was the appeal, like how did you know about that shop? Yeah,
So
did you make the networking through training
So
or?
this is kind of a cool story. And Sherwood was just with Carm, and he wouldn't use my name because he didn't talk to me, which was cool. So I'll tell you guys, if you watch the episode with him and Carm, he
Yeah.
absolutely was referring to me.
Okay.
Um, but one of his techs, Mike, who's become a really good friend of mine. Mike and I talk all the time. But Mike was in one of the forums on Facebook, and he put up a job, the want ad, and I'm reading through it and I'm like, man, this guy's got like they really, it's about culture, culture, culture. And I've
Yes.
never really been a part of that. I mean, the reader's done a pretty good job of the family atmosphere, but it's so high volume there and just so
Mhm.
busy, like it's hard, right? And it doesn't really fit the way I think. And like I was always honest with them, like it just our ideas were always different, but Sherwood's really matched what I believed in.
Yeah.
And talked to Mike a couple times on the phone, his tech, and his tech finally was like, "Hey, Sherwood, you need to call this guy." And Sherwood called me one day. He was driving back, I believe it was from the Keys, visiting one of the step kids, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
And he called me, and we had a really good conversation. And he's like, "Hey, figure out when you can come down here. I'd love to have you here." So this was around July 4th weekend. Um, Talked to my wife, talked to the kids. I'm like, hey, I've never seen the ocean in my life. We never really traveled, never had the money to because, trying to raise four babies.
Mhm.
If you guys want to go to Florida, we got some extra money. Let's make it happen. We drove down there. Sherwood met us at the hotel. They had gift baskets in there for my kids and
Oh, that's
Holly. I
nice.
mean, they were just phenomenal, man. Just I can't to this day, like I can't tell people enough, like the things Sherwood Cook and his son Sherwood did for us, from a personal aspect and trying to get us down there was, you probably see the emotion right now. I get emotional because, even though it didn't work out, the respect I have for that man and his operation and the things he does, proud of him, proud of the things they're doing down there.
Yeah.
But, it was a cool interview process. I talked with Sherwood on the phone, so that's interview one. I
Mhm.
met his son Sherwood. So Sherwood's a junior, and then his son's the third. So we call him
Yeah.
S2 and S3.
Nice.
So I met with S2 and S3 and one of his advisors at the time, and had another interview on the spot. And then they had us over to S3's house. They had a bounce house and a full spread of meal, and all of his people that could be there from the first shop were there.
Mhm.
Um, we all hit it off good. He then told me, I believe it was on this visit. It may have been shortly after. It kind of all runs together because this happened really quick.
Yeah.
And he told me that he was getting location number two and wanted me to come down and help become his guy at location number two because he already had Andrew, that's featured in the videos, as his
Yes.
shop foreman at number one at the first store. So we did it. Um, and there was a lot of learning curves. And I'll be honest, and I think I've talked with Sherwood about this. I at times I think we had personality conflict because we're both alpha males,
Mhm.
very much so. And sometimes I think we probably should have talked things out more. And I'll take blame for that. I'll take blame
Yeah.
for that. Um, but it was great. It was a great experience, and I consider a lot of those guys still to this day my friends.
Mhm.
Some serious family things came up where we had to move home.
Yeah.
Um, they were very, I mean, they were so cool about it. Like, and you got to understand, like, they spent a lot of money to get me down there. And one of these days, one way, shape, or form, I'm gonna pay them back every dime they spent to get us down there and back. Like, one day when things finally calm down financially.
You made a big impression though with the people like in their socials, like because you still see the comments and it's like, well,
Oh
why
yeah,
did Andrew leave, right? Why did Andrew leave?
yeah. I
And I
mean,
don't know if it's that people, it's like it's the online haters that want to have this, this detractors that say, oh, he's not a good place to work for. But I mean, you had a lot of people that just seem to be, and I understand that it's just like part of your role there was, and the fact that a lot of what you were working on is what they want to shoot for content, right?
yeah,
So you're in front of the camera a lot, and then
mhm,
everybody's like, well, "Where did Andrew go?"
yeah.
And that's what I was like, why? What? It couldn't. He couldn't have left because of something bad.
No,
That's what I was
no,
saying. There was nothing. There was no reason he would leave because of something bad. It had
no.
to be a very important reason to go. Then
Yeah.
and you don't have to touch on that. It's not, if you don't want to touch on it, you're not comfortable, that's
Well,
fine.
I
It's
mean, long story short, I mean, I'll share it because we kind of alluded to it. They were very respectful to things that were going on. I want to put that out there. Royalty as a business, as a corporate, however you want to, they were great to me.
Mhm.
My youngest son was fighting some very serious depression, and which is crazy because he was the one that wanted to make the move down there. But like
Yeah.
once we got there, him and my wife both were really fighting some serious depression. We realized that it was because we were 1,000 miles away from everybody, right? And
Mhm.
the kids and her did not have a very good warm fuzzy feeling at the school because my wife's a school teacher,
Right.
so she was teaching there, and just some things happened, and then when my son started dealing with the depression, I realized, dad cape comes out, right?
Yeah,
The super dad cape, and my wants can't outdo his needs,
that's right.
and S2 really understood where I was coming from that when I approached them.
Mhm.
Um, and I just kind of disappeared. I mean, they were so respectful that later on we did put a video out
Yeah.
where we announced why I had left. And I mean, it's so cool. I mean, I was at STX and I had people coming up to me wanting to take pictures and talk.
Yeah.
And man, the way that makes me feel, and I know the way it makes Sherwood feel, like you can't put that in words. Like
No.
you're almost like a superstar. So it's kind of like first time it happens, you kind of like, not that I think I'm a superstar, right? But
No.
it's like that whole, it's so bizarre that people come up and like, I had a Hispanic gentleman come up to me, and this was at STX, and he's like, "Hey, you changed my life."
Yeah.
And you don't realize, like, as people and as instructors, presenters, things of that nature, like, you have a ripple effect on people. Like,
Mhm.
if you, a good friend of mine, Glenn Todd, told me one day, like, "Hey man, what you do, you're changing family trees, you're changing lives." And we don't sometimes think about that, as content creators, as instructors, as teachers, as hell, as fellow man, right? And you think about, like, if somebody took something you taught them and they just gained 5 hours a week on it, you just changed their whole life. You just
Oh,
changed their tax bracket. And I never, man, you want to talk about never thinking about that? And like that is the, I'll be honest with you. I would teach for free if I could. If I
mhm.
didn't have to take money to because I'm leaving work, I would instruct for free the rest of my life,
Yeah.
just for that high and to get those responses from people. Like it's, man, that is the ultimate. I used to be you, right? Like I used to be that guy or girl that came up to me, and again, I was blessed. I had Ken Zanders in my life, and John Thornton, Scott Manna. I mean, I could go on for hours. The guys
Mhm.
that I was blessed to have, but a lot of people in other parts of the country haven't had that, and they rely on social media. So whether you hate it or love it, because I sometimes could take it either way.
Yep.
That's why Paul Danner. I mean, that's why his
No.
platform's so important and so big. I mean, he was the guy that started this, right? And
He's the nucleus. Like he really is. I mean, and that's not throwing shade at any of the guys from
no,
Motor Age
not
or
at
that
all.
have been around forever. But YouTube was this uncharted thing,
It was.
where everybody had it, right? It had access to it. Everybody had it. And I was just like, the first time I saw the first ASTE that I went to, and that was Paul's first one, the way it's just like you were saying, the way people responded to him, he said it's overwhelming to
It
him.
is.
He is just like, and I didn't get it. I'm just like, you
I
know.
bet you do now, though. I mean, you got a
Oh,
platform now that's
when,
like,
when I was there, it was the same. It was like people want to stop and shake my hand, and I'm terrible. Like Paul makes a joke, we should all wear our profile pictures around our necks because we can't remember names, but I can remember some faces. And people would be like, and you're like, they're telling you who they are, and I'm like, okay, I think I remember the little bit of conversation, but they are so not enamored, but so thankful
yes,
for just a little bit of what we put in, you and I, people like us. uh, it resonates so much with them, right? And it's just like you said, it's that ripple. And I mean, that's how you end up with a tidal wave at the end that just starts to smash that
it does.
old way of thinking, is because, you have all these little pebbles that fall in the pond, and it just keeps building and building and building until, and so many people, it's like Benji Verse, right? He's like, everything, the way you were resonated with me. People say, when you were so mad about that, he said, I've been in that place. So a lot of it for me has not been from a good place, where this effect that I've had, it's been this frustration and this anger. But and I keep saying it's so therapeutic for me to do this. I would do this for free. I
Yeah,
pretty much do it for free, and because of the therapy, I will
yeah,
never stop doing this as long as I can, because it keeps me. It's why I'm still here. It's not about that I'm relevant, but it's why I'm still doing the industry, because I was like you. I wanted out bad.
yeah,
I
yeah.
wanted out bad. You
You know,
know.
this industry is kind of like the best worst girlfriend you ever had, right? Like you love it, you love it, you love it, but sometimes you need to leave it, right? Like
Yes.
it's kind of like you're the battered woman in a relationship, kind of a bad analogy, but an analogy
No,
nonetheless, right? And
it is. It
it's
is.
it's
It's
been tough,
yeah.
you've talked about this quite a bit. I mean, I've had great mentors, but I've had some really, forgive my
Oh,
language, a lot of shitty ones too, that just treated me like crap and told me how stupid I was. And like, you start believing that. And I've always said, like, I'm never going to be that guy. And I caught myself doing that initially
mhm,
on some of the forums. So kind of a quick funny story. First time I met Scott Hicks, Scott's like, man, I was a little intimidated to talk to you. And I'm like, why, dude? Is it the RBF? I know I got,
yeah,
resting bitch face all the time. And he's like, no, man, like our first encounter online, you were kind of an asshole,
mhm,
and like, wow, like first off, I never meant it that way. Like in
yeah.
typing, you can take typing however you want, right? Like you
It's the
can really twist
worst form
that.
of communication there ever was.
Oh God, it's so horrible. That's why this is so great. I remember the first time I had talked to Brian Pollock
Mm,
online, I thought, I was like, man, this dude's an ass, And then I've since got to know him a little bit, chatting
yeah.
back and forth, and you're like, oh man, I read that the way I wanted to read it.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
it's a love hate relationship with it, but I think for the most part, like, man, we're seeing the changing of the guard. We're starting to see techs and mentees and mentors starting to really do better. I
mhm.
think that old way of thinking, like, I'm not scared for somebody to be better than me. I want everybody. One, I think most people are, but two, I want people to do better than I do and be
Yeah.
better. And if I can pour some water and miracle grow on that a little bit to help you out, that's what I'm going to do. And again, I was blessed. I was blessed. I had good and I had bad, but the good ones just had such a positive impact in my life that
Mhm.
I'm going to pay that forward. And
Yeah.
sometimes,
I'm trying so hard to not be one of the worst mentors that I ever had. You know what I mean? Like the kind of guy that, like, you didn't want to approach in the shop. You didn't want to ask to borrow a tool. You didn't want to ask for help. And it's tough some days, right? Because we get a little older, and then we see the younger generation is different than our generation was and the generation before that. And we're just like, that kid's not worth putting the time in, you know?
which I think a lot, again, I got a different perspective because I got to teach a lot of this generation stuff, right? And the thing I always tell guys that, man, this generation doesn't work or doesn't want to do this, you just don't know how to approach them.
Yeah.
These kids, and I don't blame them, they don't want to work 55, 60 hours a week. Like they
Yeah.
want to have that work-life balance. They're not going to remember firing orders and crap like that because they got this, right?
That's
This is
yeah.
the most powerful tool in their arsenal and they know how to utilize it. So
Yeah.
like I always approach it like this with the younger guys. Teaching mechanics is hard. I think mechanical ability you either have or you don't.
Mhm.
And I'll be the first to tell anybody mechanical ability is probably where I struggle the most. That's why
Yeah.
everybody was so hard on me. They told me how bad I sucked because I screwed a lot of stuff up, right? But I can't teach that. But what I can teach you to do is how to find information. And
Yes.
I think as a mentor, now at this point in my life, that's like my big thing. Like if a younger kid comes up to me and goes, I'm gonna pick on one of my former apprentices, Derek. You know, I love Derek. He has the mechanical aptitude, but he would always come up and be like, "Hey man, what do you think?" And you know, I'd always be like, "Did you read?
Mm-hmm.
Did you look it up?"
Yes.
You know, and it got to the point where he would come up to me, say my name, and I just kind of give him that look, and he knew he'd drop his head, and he knew he needed to go read a little bit. And I'll be honest, like 90% of the time, like he got what he needed out of just reading. You know, just sometimes they need that.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not. I don't want to be your crutch. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to help you grow. But if that information is available to you, go find it.
Yeah.
And if
And
we do that,
I struggled with that because a lot of the way I talk is just as if we were talking in the shop.
hmm
Right? Real quick, we're all right behind the 8 ball. The
yeah,
time crunch is on, and it's like they're asking you questions. You're like, go look it up. I can't remember. Right.
yeah, yeah,
Or, why are you asking me? You have the same computer on your laptop
yeah,
that I do, or excuse me, on your workstation. Go look it up. It's up there. I know what you're asking. I understand why you're asking it but trust me, go look it up. Read the effing service information, right? It's a battle cry in some of the groups. And that's where I got that reputation for, oh, he doesn't want to help anybody. And
well, you
it's not, but it's like, I want
help
to show
yourself.
you, yes, I want to show you how to how I had to do it, right?
Yeah,
Because it's not to say that I'm not going to help him because I had to fight and scratch. That's the
nah,
furthest thing from my attitude, but it's a situation of like, if I keep giving the answer, what happens if tomorrow I get hit by a bus and I'm not here?
exactly,
What do you do, right?
exactly.
We talk about that, and it's like that's that rough edge that's going on in this industry right now. Brian and I talked about that last week, where there's so much going out there for content's sake, and I'm seeing some people that are putting some content out there, and it's like, well, the content push is so important because it's financially they're relying on it, and I get it, but tomorrow they could snap their fingers and go, you know what? Everything on YouTube, everything on TikTok's not monetized. And then what do? Then you're stuck with a broken business model.
Well, and if that's this is gonna hurt some feelings, and I don't care. If that's the whole reason you're doing it, get out. Just
Yeah.
leave right now. If the reason you're putting content out that's from a training perspective is for money, man, you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. Get the hell
Mhm.
out. We don't need you anyway. And that hurts some feelings, and I'm unapologetic on that regard, you know. Now, if you're doing it because you want to help people and hey, the money came, okay, that's cool. But
Mhm.
no, you're not. I struggle with that because I can't do that, right? Like
Mhm.
I've often said, like most people know I don't put out content a lot. I talk a little bit on TikTok. I don't do anything YouTube, and a lot of it, one, you know, for me, Sherwood started that and Royalty started that. For me, that was where I witnessed it, right? And I don't. Well, they're going to have different followers than I would. I don't want to follow the same role, right?
Right.
Like I think that would be I'm struggling with that. I think it would be disrespectful to S2 and S3. That's where I'm at with it, and that's why I don't do it. But if I was to put it out there, or I do decide one day, or you know, Sherwood and I have a conversation, I feel comfortable with it, and I do put it out there. I want to be honest with you. Me, the type of person I am, if it becomes monetized and I make money, I'm giving that right back. And you know, we're gonna do sponsors, we're
Yeah.
gonna do scholarships. That's what we're gonna do because
Yeah.
you don't get into training for the income; it's the outcome. You
That's
know,
right.
and so I struggle so bad with the money side of this that it's kind of why I've really hit the brakes on doing a lot of stuff.
And that's the biggest thing for me is it's like misinformation is a terrible thing in our industry, right?
Yep.
I call out people all the time that are saying things that are just flat out lies or teaching something the wrong way. Maybe teaching something the wrong way, but you know what I mean, right? Like
Yeah.
when they think they're teaching a voltage drop and they're not really teaching a voltage drop, I'm going to call that person out. But then when it's like, okay, you'll leave things up there because it's monetized, even though
That's
it's
why.
misinformation, it's
Yeah.
everything I can do to
Yeah.
not like start a war because it's like we've been working so hard to try and get away from that in this industry. And then I see people that it's like, listen, bro, I'm leaving that content up because like I'm getting, downloads off of it, saves, shares, follows, likes, whatever, pays X amount at the end of the month. I don't care. It's misinformation. It's wrong. You're making us look poor. Don't
Yes.
do it.
Yes.
And it's a tough thing, right? Because you don't want to get known as that person to be like calling them out because oh, you're a know-it-all. No, there's a reason I don't teach anything online on how to do it technical, because everybody does it better than me in terms
Right.
of how they
The
would teach it.
I'm the
So,
same
I mean,
way.
it's like if we're going to have a conversation about, you know, the shop dynamic, the culture, I'm going to put my hand up and I'm going to be involved in every one of
Oh,
those conversations because
absolutely.
I have a lot to share from that perspective, right? I going back to my I remember one guy I work with, and I'll never he will be with me until my final day in my brain and my psyche of how not to be, because he was one of those people that was like he would physically assault coworkers. He was
Oh,
like, and so I catch myself once in a while when something pops into my brain and I go, whoa, I sound a lot like he did. And that's just enough for me to rein myself back in. And I don't want to blame the job, but it happens like that. The time constraints, the pressure, the flow, whatever you want to call it in the shop, it's such a
it's
it's
a tough
such a
business.
yeah.
This is
And it's like,
it's
so
tough business.
you feel like constantly like I don't have time for you. I don't have time for you. And that's where I have to just dial back and go, you know what? There's only so many opportunities he's going to have, that young person
Yes.
in his life, for 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 me to mentor him and to be mentored. So regardless of whatever the customer's waiting in the waiting room, it doesn't matter. When there's a teaching moment, you got to jump on that teaching, and
Absolutely.
I'm good for that. When I find something, like you called earlier, the light bulb moments, when I
Yeah.
have those, I pull everybody over in the shop, and some of them looking at me like, what are you showing me this for, dude? Like, I don't care that, I'm reaffirming that, hey, it can be this simple, or it can be this, it's just, this is how we go wrong. This is how it goes wrong. And that's, people, open vessel. I say it all the time, right? Be an open vessel. Be allowed to have people pour into you, because that's
Yep.
what we're all here to do, I so yeah, when I think about the people that have molded me, yes, I've had some great positive people, but it's the people that were like really hard on me that made me, not buckle under anything else that I've ever faced since. Not even close, you know.
Yeah. Sometimes those. I'm a guy of faith. I mean, I literally wear my faith on my sleeves, right? I think sometimes the Lord puts people in your
Yeah.
pathway for a reason. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, and it kind of goes back to one of my favorite sayings is, he who the Lord favors, so does the devil, right?
Yep.
So sometimes those people are put there on purpose, and really, I'm gonna be honest, even the ones that were absolutely shitty in my life and were horrible role models, I thank them because they
Mhm.
showed me what not to do and not who to be and not how I want to be remembered. And that's really helped been especially in the last couple of years. As we're transitioning to more of a presenter, demonstrator, instructor role. I want to be somebody that people can think in a positive light, and not in a negative. So you got to reflect back on those bad times too, just so you don't fall into those habits.
Yeah. Now, last week, kind of what spearheaded this, not this conversation, because we were going to have this conversation, but you put a post up,
Hmm.
and it got a lot of traction and a lot of people. Where did that come from, Andrew? Because it wasn't a situation of like you were negative.
No.
But you were saying that very much what a lot of us that are more known to be negative, had been saying. And what spearheaded that for you? Where did that come from? What
Hawken
was
Light.
yeah
Hawken and I have been having this conversation for a while, and we've been talking about it, and we never really put it to paper. And I think it was an IATN post, believe it or not. I still lurk on there once in a while,
I
and
should leave a bunch.
um, people they were just talking about having trouble finding people. And then I
Mhm.
had a conversation a fellow advisory member for one of the local high schools, and he starts going off about not finding good help. And I talked about it more from the technician side, but maybe you should look at what you don't offer and what you're doing wrong. Stop putting it on everybody else. So let's talk about what some of some of us older techs, some of us younger techs, whoever things we're looking for. Let's talk about the culture shift. Let's talk about it because that's where we got to start making the changes. This is not a job. This is not a job. This is a career, and we need to make it that way.
Yeah.
And that post kind of started that. I got some really good feedback. Got a little bit of hate from it too, from some people I would have never imagined in my inbox. You know, like, hey, you can't set the precedent that way. Not everybody can afford it. Well, I completely understand that. That wasn't my intent at all. But I'm trying to make you understand, like, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. It's time to change.
Yes, 100%. And it's like everybody, if you want to talk about a destination training event or a training, there's still so many shops that have zero training budget.
Yes.
Okay, first of all, that shouldn't even be a thing anymore, right? We should
No.
be like, all of us have some kind of training budget, and then we should be aspiring to be able to take our people to a destination event for what the culture of that they will come back with. Like you said, the networking and everything. When that post came up, you reached out to me and you're like, hey, I want to start a project with you.
Yeah.
And, we agreed we're not going to share a whole lot of what it's going to be, but I mean, I think it is going to be really exciting to do. And I think it's going to bring the kind of conversations that need to happen. And it won't be, there'll be a lot of things said that everybody's already heard.
Yes.
Right? Because, I mean, the conversation happens every day. We just keep holding each other accountable. But I mean, if we can get some of those superstars on both sides of the table to come together and sit down in a room with people listening and table it, and that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be hopefully just tabling it, because I mean, I'm not going to be the input on. You don't want to listen to my business advice because you have no customers, and you don't want to hear me talk about how to fix a car because you'd probably go down a rabbit hole. But if we can get those conversations happening about, I have to see your perspective better and you have to see mine, right? Then we just go home from an event like that where everything starts to really, because you hear the people talk about it, and it's like they go to these events, and then when they, for the first couple of weeks, maybe they do some things, and then they just fall right back into the same old, same old. And I think that it's not just a situation of, like, you have to have the conversations in the classroom, but we all have to, like, how do we implement what we just learned? And I
Absolutely.
think that becomes more about, you sitting across from your boss, or you sitting across from an owner, sits across from a tech and goes, okay, I understand your struggle, but let's work on why that is. And then, because the why is way more important. We can't just keep saying it's greed that, they're not going to this or not doing that. It's not.
It's not at all. Not at
It's
all.
fear is what is keeping so many of us from doing making that last step. It's just fear.
Yeah.
And I think if we can show that, like, I'm going to have your back and you're going to have mine, that's the big, then the fear thing doesn't become such an issue. You know what I mean? Like, it's tough, eh? Like, my boss, I keep saying, he leans on me for so many opinions, and I give them mine, and he doesn't really enact a ton of them. But I know that he's listening, and I know that he's considering it. And it's just, and I want it to be like, if you just ask me, like, if you asked me on Friday, I want it to be enacted by Monday. I realize that it takes a long time
Yeah.
to take that step, to go to that next place. That it's tough, eh? But I'm excited. I am
Yeah.
super.
Well, and it's kind of like, give a little bit here. Like we talked about earlier, I think too, a lot of us as technicians, lack of a better term, we're ignorant, right?
Mhm,
Like, we
mhm.
think we know what it takes to run a business, but realistically,
No,
we got no clue, man. I fix cars. I'll never claim to be a business guy.
yeah,
I will tell you this, that I spend a lot of time reading and researching and trying to understand the business. More for me, it's the leadership mindset. Like, I love leadership roles.
yeah,
I just love it. I always joke around, if I could find somebody that just wanted to be a money man and let me be in control, I would do it, because I'm horrible with money. I'm just
yeah,
gonna put that out there. And there's a lot of shops that have mass chaos, and it's because it's piss poor leadership, right? If you're dealing with chaos 24/7, you got to look in the mirror. And sometimes that's a hard conversation to have, whether you're the owner or you're the management team, whatever you are. And again, from a technician standpoint, we all think we have the best ideas, but, like,
oh,
we got to buy into it too, right? And I think
yeah,
that's where it becomes imperative that, numbers are shared. I think
yeah,
owners need to stop being afraid of doing that. I'm at a point in my life, I don't think you're running out and buying your third Harley and your
oh,
second big bass boat. Like, I understand what this, it takes money, right? But, like,
yeah,
I think we need to share numbers. We need to be honest and open with each other. But we got to set realistic goals too. and then we got to create a culture that's going to work, A, for the budget of the shop, and B, for the personalities that are in there. So I really look forward to this conversation. I hope it gains some traction. I hope both sides come away better than the whole "this is me against them" mentality. Because I mean, if we're honest, man, that's what we see. And I'll be honest, what spawned this a lot. I mean, Honkin and I've talked about it, but Sherwood seen my post and called me.
Oh,
And at first, I thought maybe I upset him, and then he started explaining some things that I would have never looked at from a technician's side, right?
yeah.
And it was great information, and that's where I was like, you know what? I think we keep talking about it, we keep talking about this stuff, but I think it's time that maybe we do it in a bigger capacity and get more input from both sides and stop, us against
Imagine,
them.
imagine if it wound up being a series.
Yeah,
Like we're at every event, it's just a continuation of a conversation.
yeah,
That could be so with new guests and old guests, and
absolutely.
like imagine what that would do, right?
But
And
we got to do
it's
something, we got, as an industry, let's face it, a lot of these smaller, older shops are closing their doors. As an instructor, I see a lot more corporate stuff take over, which, you this, that, or the other, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, whatever. But I think some of them are doing good things on the culture side. They're trying to promote things, and on other sides, they're really lacking. Um, and I think from a technician standpoint, let's face it, the average technician has a huge ego. I mean, we all know it. I've
yeah,
had one. I have one at times. We all do, right? And we got to put that in check and like really say, like, I'm a tech. I might not have all the right answers on a business perspective, and I'm a tech, and I think sometimes as a technician we forget that the hardest part of this industry, in my opinion, happens at the front counter. And
yes,
then we discredit those guys so much.
mm,
Again, you hear it all the time. Oh, he's a mechanic secretary or whatever, right? And we got to stop that crap. And I hope this can evolve and be really good, and get some conversations started. Man, I'm really looking forward to what this could become.
yeah. The buzzword that's always for me on the tip of my brain lately, and we see it a lot more, is value, right? And I mean, and it's a good way because a lot of us are starting to say we're not valuing ourselves, right? So like you and I before we got on, I talked about how sometimes you can see that customer and they're so thankful that what really should have been a $200 repair, you did it for $100, just round numbers. And you see that look of surprise, and then it's like the tech in me wants to go, ugh,
Yeah,
we should have got that other $100 because there's things we need that $100 couldn't go towards. you know you can't go to training if you gave away $100. And gave away is not always the best term, but I mean essentially what it is if you could have got more and you didn't get it, whatever. But so the value word has become a lot better in terms of just saying, hey, I feel undervalued. Before we used to say I felt ripped off, I felt taken advantage of, and now I'm just like, so the value is a much better way to say to people, let's really look at what our people do. you
hmm
know it's been good for me because I look at, like, I know the struggle now of how tough it is when you're dealing with people on the counter, and they are so reluctant to trust, so reluctant to pay. And it's a fight. It is a fight. And it's that balancing act of, do I get what, I used to say it, just put your door rate up. It's so
yeah, because that's so easy, right? I mean, that's
right.
the way I thought too, honestly.
And then I realized what it is it's not so much the door rate, it's the repair cost.
Yeah,
And you look at it and it's like, so if you put down every little bit of labor that should be there at that door rate, your repair cost is way above everybody else's. And then it's like, so you go in there and you say, okay, so we only did the labor at 2 hours and it should have been 3. The repair cost of the customer is still competitive with everybody else is at. But I, the technician, looking at that going, well, you gave away the labor, or you gave away part of the labor, or you shaved the labor. I'm starting to understand now why it has to be done sometimes, because
yeah,
the door rate has put us at a point where, and it's scary, right? Because we're going to see the door rates continue to go up. There's
yeah.
just no way it won't. I mean, we're going to have to, I said it, we're going to have to start throwing money at this technician shortage problem for a while until the culture catches up. And the door rates, we're going to see $200 door rates. And we're going to see 150 be common, not uncommon. And again, like you talked about at the beginning, certain areas won't support $150 an hour door rates, right?
Yep.
Like certain rural areas where there's still so many people, doing things for under $100, because that's the demographic. Maybe that's all they can afford. There's pockets of really hard hit parts of the country.
Yep.
Those people don't have the resources for a $200 an hour door rate. But how do we make it so that we're still like, because we can't see those places not be able to bring the culture that this industry needs to have up. But how do we do that, Andrew? Like, because as somebody that's taught, and you said you've been around and exposed to so many different people, how do we do it?
Man, if I had all the answers for that, I'd be the guy everybody's paying to have talk to him, right?
Yeah.
I wish I did. From a technician standpoint, here's what I say to everybody, and for the owners listening, you just got to give people the right place to work, right? We gotta believe in training and building up. Career paths has always been a big thing. Like I'm at a point in my life and career, like I want to know there's another step. I don't ever believe in maxing out, right? And a lot of younger technicians want to know that there's that next level. But we also have to have that uncomfortable conversation that a lot of people don't like to admit, that if we're not careful, we're going to take our rates so high, people aren't going to bring us their cars. And
Yeah.
that's the other side of this. And I know there's points, counterpoints to everything. I get that. I've heard both sides. I understand that. But there became a point when the TV repairman, just it was cheaper to go
Yes.
buy a car or buy a new TV, right? And we've got to be careful. But I think that's where the training aspect really comes into play. That's
Mm.
why I think, the training fund needs to be one of the most heavily funded ones. And I don't say that from the instructor standpoint that, hey, I just want more of your money. That's not where I'm talking. But I
Yeah.
mean, in training can come in various different forms.
Yep.
But we've got to do a better job training, so we're not throwing the client's money away. We've got to do a better job of educating the client on the other side of the counter.
Yes.
Um, we got to do a better job of educating our advisors. I mean, I think the advisors should be at all the same classes the techs take.
Oh,
I, I
1,000%.
you know, but we got to be careful. And I don't have all the answers. I'm not a marketing guy. I'm not a business savvy person. I'm none of that, right? But I try to look at it like how I spend my money on other things. And if we're not careful, we're gonna outpace ourselves, and constantly saying, give me more, raise that rate, raise that rate, raise that rate. Like that, there comes a point where the value has to be there for one. Like we've got to be offering the value to back up that rate. You know, people aesthetics sell people. You've
Yeah.
got to have that clean, nice shop. Your technicians need to be clean and look
Yeah.
presentable. I mean, there's a lot that plays into this, right? Not just the money that the owners are pushing around.
And I used to, the TV repairman, when you said that to me, was what an awesome analogy. Because I mean, my years of working at the dealer, and still even my own headspace, sometimes I get trapped in where it's like, if I saw a customer with a car at the dealership and it was 2, 3 years old and it was something that was driving them nuts about it, a lot of we didn't like to admit it, but a lot of those people, they just got rid of it and got another car.
Yeah, they
They
did.
just traded it in, and got another one.
Yep.
Once we step out of that dealer network, that's not reality anymore, right? You're dealing with people that probably haven't even necessarily paid for this used car yet.
Yep.
Now it's got a pretty substantial repair problem, a transmission that's shot, an engine that overheats, like a diagnostic problem that nobody can seem to wrap their head around. And we always just go get another car. It's not that simple, eh? And
Not anymore. I mean, it
no,
never really was, but I mean, cost of cars, cost of parts.
oh,
Um, it's just I get it, right? Like I try to be empathetic. Like I understand the cost of doing business has gone up, the cost of parts has gone up, the cost of ownership's gone up, but we still have to be mindful of trying to keep the sun out of my way here. We have to be mindful of that kind of stuff too, and again, those are uncomfortable conversations nobody likes to have. And I think we have to have those conversations, and we got to start having them now.
yeah. I'm that's what And again, you know, it always still irked me, and it still irks me when we talk about Parts Canada misdiagnosis and stuff like that, because all that money, we know what happens. They don't get that money back. You know what I mean? Like, it's regardless, we all want to say, but there's so many shops leaving those wrong parts installed that it's just like I can't stomach that. You know what I mean? It's so hard for me because it's like that's where all that budget that the customer had for proper diag went.
Yes.
It went in a mass airflow that was $500 that didn't fix the car. You know,
Yeah.
it went on a fuel pump that was $800 by the time you ran new lines in it that didn't fix the car. You know, somebody we were sitting, I was having dinner with my family on Wednesday night, and they were telling me about this. They didn't know what it was. A Mercedes sitting at a local shop. And the local shop around here does not have a reputation for being the kind of car or the kind of shop that you would take a problem car to. They can move a lot of volume, long-standing reputation, but not known for, if you have a Mercedes with a particularly difficult problem, you would not take it there. And my mother's like, why does that happen? I'm like, well, right now, that's probably the only shop that could get them in right away. You know, if you try to take that car to the dealership, and I don't know how old a Mercedes it was, I don't even know what it was there for. She couldn't remember. She doesn't pay attention to that kind of details, but she's just overhearing the conversation, right? And she's like trying to tell me, I bet you Jeff could fix it. First of all, no, because Jeff tries to avoid those cars. But secondly, it's a situation of it's like, because if it went over to the dealer, a lot of the dealers now, if it was 10 years old, would be telling the customer, scrap it, get rid of it. We're not going to be able to get to the bottom of this for you. That's a tough spot, eh? It really is, because this person, they might only had that car 2 years and it isn't paid off yet. And all of a sudden we're saying a module that you need isn't available. And we think it might be the module, but we don't even know. And like, there's water intrusion issues that can cause this and that. Like, it could have been it's a can of worms. And I feel sorry for people like that are stuck with, but I mean, this industry, you know, it comes back to the value. You have to be able to show the customer the value of what it is that it's the problem solving side of it. You know, don't get wrapped up in the fact that it's a $700 module and, you know, can we even get one? Well, let's get to that point first, right? But it's going to take $400 in say, just round numbers, in diag time to prove it or disprove it.
Yeah.
It's going to take some investigative work, right?
And we got to be honest. You know, I think Paul talks about the retainer fee, right? And I think that's a smart move that I've seen a lot of shops starting to transition to.
Yeah.
And the shops that are putting parts on that aren't fixing, I mean, come on, guys, take them back off, right? Either put them on the shelf, or if you've got a relationship with your parts store that allows you to send that back, that's what you need to be doing, right? But if you would spend some time sending your guys to training or mandating training, which I'm a believer in, then a lot of this would be alleviated. And the fact of the matter is even though I'm complaining about we got to be careful about costs, the hour diag doesn't exist anymore and hasn't existed in a long time.
No.
And we've got to make a change. We have to make a change. I don't know what that change is going to entail yet, but it's got to happen. We've got to do an inward search, and we've got to make some changes inside the shops. But shotgunning parts, I mean, we got to stop that. Now, is there times where, hey, I've got an idea this $50 part's going to end up taking care of it?
Sure.
You know what? You have or spend 2 extra hours digging into it. Those are conversations you let the client make that call,
Yes.
right? And I'm not I personally am not afraid to do that. Like I've done that a few times. Like, hey, I know I can get to the bottom of this problem. Chrysler Communication ones are my favorite.
Yeah.
You know, hey, I can get to the bottom of this, or I can throw the star connector on here, ship you on your way, and 85, 90% of the time we're going to fix your car, right? Like, those are kind of conversations we need to be having. The just guessing on everything is where we make each other look bad.
And it's tough because like it goes so fast. Like the star connector is a perfect example, right? Like you've known about how common that particular part is to fail and the way that it fails for a while now.
Yeah.
It just pops up in a TikTok video last month, and now all of a sudden everybody's going, "Oh my God, I had one that I got rid of, or I got one of the I got rid of that car. If I'd have just known." This is the beauty of networking, right?
Yes.
This is why, you know, and again, I mean, intermittents are the worst.
They are.
Like, because you could spend all kinds of money trying to prove it out, or you can just hey, I've been down this road before, right? I put a coil on it and it fixes it, or I put
Yeah.
an oxygen sensor in it when it was cold, or I put a purge solenoid in it, even though I did, and it fixes the car. As long as we are honest with the customers that this is a try,
Yes.
this is because otherwise, like I had one on Thursday. Thursday is our Friday. They came in an hour before the shop shut down. They called, and the initial complaint is a 21 Volkswagen Jetta, uh, gas burner, smell gas. Well, immediately you panic. You're like, well, they're smelling gas. So anyway, they gets here, and of course, by the time they get to the shop, they were probably 30 minutes away, and they're on a long trip, so they're from out of town. They get here and like, it's not even doing it now. What do you want us to do? Okay, well, let's look at the car at least and see. And we scan it. Of course, check engine light's on now, which is not uncommon for a Volkswagen, but it's a 2021. It's got like 111,000 kilometers, so 70,000 miles thereabout. And it's got misfire faults, evap faults, and we're like, did the light was ever on before? No. Okay, well, here's the reality. Right now, the car's not broke. What do I think it is? It's a purge solenoid, right? The data is showing me that all the misfire, the everything, the cause and the effect. Purge solenoid stuck open causes this, causes that, causes
Yep.
fuel trims to go. I can't get you one this late in the day. We're not open tomorrow. The car's not is testing fine. Here's what we do know: it's not leaking fuel. The fuel smell was probably a byproduct of it running rich, not of actually leaking gas. So what you were smelling was rich, not. And it was just that peace of mind that we were able to give to them, right? Was so much. They were so thankful that it was like, okay, they can continue on the road trip where they're headed, and they're not. They feel better. Other shops might have said, we're not even going to be able to look at that today,
Yep.
or I'm going to have to keep it here and make it act up before I can. No, the purge solenoid's got a QR stamp right on it. I can take a picture of my phone, put that on my DVI, and go, when you get back home, and if this should act up again, this is the part that we think is probably the problem, but it has to be tested. You can go online with this beautiful little QR code, look it up, get some understanding about what it is, where to find it, yada, yada. Like, Andrew, we have come so far in such a short period of time as an industry.
Yes.
I'm super excited about where we're headed. I really am. Like, and I'm thankful because it's these kind of conversations and the changing the group and changing industry group and ASOG and all that kind of stuff, and people like Sherwood and yourself and everybody that is putting out content. We didn't, when I started this, in the trade 25 years ago, we didn't have this. Like,
No.
we had IATN.
Yep.
It didn't, and it touched a lot of people, but it didn't touch the level that now.
Well, and some of those guys were just absolutely horrible.
Oh.
I remember asking questions or reading through, and it's very much like some of the Facebook groups today, right? But it was a great resource. But we've definitely come
so far. What are you excited about, Andrew?
Short term, just growth, man. Like for me personally, I just want to keep growing. I just want to keep growing my skill set, be a better tech every day. Better tech, better father, husband, brother, dad. What all them things, right? Long term, I hope I'm around to see this industry make the shift that it's going to happen. Like there's no doubt in my mind.
Yes.
We can't keep doing the same things we're doing, and everybody that's Debbie Downer about it, like either shut your mouth and get out of the way or do something. Seriously, like you need to look at it at like, if not me, who, right?
Yep.
And you're not going to agree with everybody. You're not going to agree with everybody's opinions on things, and that's fine. But I am super excited of the changes we're seeing already. We've seen the wages for technicians really coming up here in the last few years. You see a lot more, or at least I see a lot more younger guys and girls in the crowds at educational events. For the longest time, I was always the young guy in the group, up until just a couple of years ago. And now you're seeing those late teens, early 20s people in the group. They're excited. They're getting their education differently than we did. They're doing the YouTube, the TikTok, the all those type of things, and that's fine. They're getting education somewhere, but I'm excited of where this is going to go. I think as an industry, we are making strides. I don't subscribe to those guys that are like, we're making no changes.
Yeah.
That's not true. You open your eyes. You're so narrow-sighted. That's why you feel that way. You
Mhm.
look outside your own four walls, and I promise you, there's been a lot of growth over the last few
Yeah.
years, and
The
it's
the
just going to continue.
the pay growth is the first step that you see
Yes,
that there's definitely been change. And I say this, I challenge the people, like, if you have not gotten a pay bump, there's probably something wrong with you at this
I
point.
agree. I agree.
Everybody out there is giving not everybody, but a lot of people are giving money to their techs. They're bringing the door rates up because they have no choice, and they're bringing them because they don't want to replace them.
Yeah.
So if you have been passed up, there's might be a reason for that. Either way, there's no better opportunity than right now to go and shop yourself around.
Well,
Right? And I'm not trying to say that to get, for techs to go to work tomorrow on Monday
I'm
and
leaving.
turn your notice in. That's not what I'm trying to
No.
say here. But please keep in mind the value that what you are to the business that's there,
Well,
and give value back. Give value to your
that's
employee.
that's the key. And the other thing, Sherwood touched on this. Sometimes these owners are just so busy. They're marketing. They're
Yes.
dealing with their coaches. They're dealing with problems in the shop. They're trying to do a culture. They're trying to do all these things. And it's not that they don't want to give you money. Maybe they just forgot, right? Maybe they forgot to have that annual conversation with you or whatnot. Ask. And the other thing is be ready for constructive criticism.
Mhm.
If you can't take criticism that, hey, you're really failing me in this area,
Yeah.
get out.
Yep.
I think we got to stop getting upset when we're told we're doing something wrong. Both ends, technician,
Yep.
owner, service riders, and be respectful of each other. But I think we got to start having those conversations of, where did I make the mistake? Why did I not get this raise? Or what
Mhm.
do I have to do as your employee to get to that next level?
Yep.
Don't be afraid to have those conversations.
Yep. 100%. I want to thank you for coming on.
Oh man, thank you.
This is I was looking forward to this. I've been excited for this one. And the little project that you and I have in the works, we're going to talk about that. And I think it's going to really put some people on their ear. I think it's going to be really cool to see. I think, when we sit in a room like that and we have that kind of conversation, and if it gets, especially if we can get it recorded and edited and put out there, we could be really onto something. You know what I mean?
I think
And
so too. And
I,
remember, if not me, who, right? So we
well,
got
that's
to do
it.
something, man.
Yeah. And we might not kill it the first time.
No, hell, we might be killing each other. Who knows? But I think this is the kind of stuff that needs to take place, and I think we need to hear it from all sides.
Yeah.
And too often we hear it from this side or that side, and sometimes we get texts that, for lack of a better term, we're just ignorant. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and sometimes the owner is ignorant to what the tech wants too. You were a tech 20 years ago, and you kind of forgot what it's like.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
think I think this is going to be great. I really look forward to it, and I'm glad that. I'm glad that you're gonna spearhead this thing and take it
I
by the horns, man.
I feel honored that you came to me with it. And I mean, and it's funny, like that people put me in that place. They've like, I want you to kind of MC it. I'm like,
You're
yeah, I
not an
can.
owner. You're not an owner. I mean, you're a tech, and it's not a shot. You know that.
Yeah.
I think personally, if we would have asked some of the guys that do the podcast that are owners, we would have set ourselves up for a little bit of bias. I
Yes.
think being a tech in your case, and because of the amount of people you surround yourself with and the people you can kind of like remove yourself, right? You can MC this thing and be just fine. And
Yeah.
I think that's why that was so important, at least for me, when I was thinking about doing this. And actually, Sherwood and I were the ones that were talking about it. I can't take full credit for this at all. This was, Sherwood and I were having the discussion, and there were some things he brought up, and I'm like, dude, I never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have thought of a better guy, man. So I think this is going to be beautiful.
I appreciate it. Well, I'll let you go. I
Thank you,
know it's
sir.
family time, and but we'll keep on the books on this. We'll get
Awesome,
some
man.
things hashed out, and I'm looking forward to it. Like we'll probably try and do it at ASTE,
Sounds good.
and it's gonna people are gonna love it. They might hate it, but I'm gonna love doing it, and I'm
They
gonna
might
love doing
love to hate it.
it. So, all right, brother, we'll let you go.
All right,
Thank
man.
you. Hey, if you could do me a favor real quick and comment on, and share this episode, I'd really appreciate it. And please, most importantly, set the podcast to automatically download every Tuesday morning. As always, I'd like to thank our amazing guests for their perspectives and expertise, and I hope that you'll please join us again next week on this journey of change. Thank you to my partners in the ASA group and to the Changing the Industry podcast. Remember what I always say, in this industry, you get what you pay for. Here's hoping everyone finds their missing 10 millimeter, and we'll see you all again next time.